A coworker says something critical, and right away your mind says, "They think I'm not good at this." A plan changes, and you feel this frustration, this thought that the whole day is ruined. That immediate, distressing thought the Stoics called that an unchecked impression. Epictetus, the philosopher, he said this thing. He said people aren't disturbed by what happens, but by their view of what happens. That's the difference between a life of quiet anxiety and one of real peace. It comes down to one skill you can learn. It's called the Discipline of Assent. It's the art of catching your mind when it's lying to you and choosing not to believe the story it tells. So we're going to look at what this discipline actually is. Why our minds make up these convincing falsehoods. Today, to take control of your own judgments. What's a thought your mind convinced you was true that you later found out was completely made up? The mind's first lie is that your initial impression is the truth. You feel anxious before a meeting, and the thought arrives, "This is going to be a disaster." You see a friend look past you, no wave, and a story forms instantly. "They're ignoring me. They must be angry." That feeling, that story feels so real. It feels undeniable. We accept it as fact, but the Stoics drew a line right there. They said there's the thing that happens, and then there's the judgment you layer on top. Those two things are not the same. They had a word for that raw, unfiltered input, a fantasia, an impression. It's just data, the sound of words in the air. The sight of a person's face, the physical sensation of your heart beating faster, that's all it is, neutral data. The trouble starts in the split second after. That's when we give our assent. We take that raw data and we stamp it with a story, a meaning, a verdict. We turn a sound into an insult, a changed plan into a personal failure, a sensation into a prophecy of doom. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this constantly. He said, "Remove the judgment, and you remove the thought, 'I am hurt.' Remove that thought, and the hurt itself is gone." He wasn't saying the external event disappears. He meant the power it has over you vanishes the moment you stop endorsing the catastrophic story you've attached to it. Make it concrete. Someone at work says, "I have some feedback on your report." That's the impression, the sound waves. Your assent is the immediate internal narrative. "Oh no, they hated it. I'm in trouble. I'm not good enough." That narrative isn't in the sound waves. You put it there. You authored that story. And because you wrote it, you can choose not to publish it. This is the gap the Stoics identified. Between the impression and your assent, there's a space. It might feel like a nanosecond, but with practice, you can widen it. You can learn to pause in that space and ask, "Is this impression telling me the truth, or is it telling me a story?" Think of the last time you felt a sharp twist of frustration or worry. Can you separate the raw event from the drama your mind built around it? That separation is where your freedom begins. Imagine there's a quiet space between something happening and your reaction to it. A kind of room. That's the Stoic pause. It's not imaginary. It's a muscle you can strengthen. That muscle is the discipline of assent. You create a gap between the first impression and your agreement with it. It's like hitting mute on the story in your mind, just for a second, so you can hear what's actually there. The Stoics called this our proheresis, our faculty of choice. It's the core of who we are, the part that decides what we believe and how we act, no matter the noise outside. Modern psychology has a similar idea, cognitive distancing, the ability to step back from your thoughts, to see them as thoughts, not commands. This is the operational heart of everything. It's how you move from theory to change. Seneca wrote about anger. He gave practical advice. The first impulse toward anger isn't voluntary. It's that initial flash, that heat. But then he said, pause. Don't grant it permission to go further. The first movements are a warning, a threat. The real passion starts when we give our approval. So his instruction was to delay, to wait, to refuse the next step in the story until you've examined the first one. This is the pause in action. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about intercepting the automatic narrative, the one that turns a feeling into a full drama. So how do you build this room in the heat of the moment? You start with a single breath. Here's a practice for the next time a strong impression hits, that surge of frustration in traffic, that knot of anxiety from an email, that sting of a perceived slight. Mentally say the word pause, then take one slow, deliberate breath, just one, in through your nose, out through your mouth. That's all. In that breath, you're not solving the problem. You're not judging the feeling. You're creating a buffer, widening the gap, stepping into that quiet room. This single breath is the physical anchor for your proheresis. It's the time it takes to remember the story in your head is just one interpretation. It's the space where you reclaim your right to choose what happens next. Think of one recurring trigger in your life, a certain tone of voice from a family member, the sight of a crowded inbox first thing in the morning. Can you commit right now to applying this one breath pause the next time it happens, not to change the outcome immediately, but simply to create that space, to witness the impression without immediately buying the ticket for the emotional ride? That single breath is where your freedom is waiting. Stoicism offers a toolkit. One of the most powerful tools is 3 questions, a way to challenge a troubling thought. It's the practical method for that pause. The way you interrogate an impression before you give it your assent. Epictetus laid this out. He said, "Don't let the force of an impression carry you away. Instead, tell it to wait. Let me see who you are. Let me see what you represent." Then put it to the test. And the test is these 3 questions. First, is this impression about something within my control? That question cuts through so much noise: the weather, traffic, another person's mood, the final outcome of a project. These aren't fully within your control. Your effort is, your preparation, your attitude, your response, those are. If the impression is about something outside your control, the answer to that first question is no. And that tells you something. Epictetus was blunt. What upsets people, he said, is not things themselves, but their judgments about those things. When you see something is not up to you, you can start to withdraw the emotional investment. You pull back from the worrying story about it. Second, is my judgment about it accurate? Is it based on facts? Here you separate the raw data from the interpretation. The fact might be your coworker was quiet in a meeting. Your judgment is they're angry with you. Is there concrete evidence for that, or is it a story you've built? The fact is your heart is beating fast before you speak. Your judgment is this means you'll fail. Is that a fact, or is it a fear? You have to become a detective of your own mind, looking for the hard evidence behind the accusation your mind is making. Third, is assenting to this thought beneficial for my character? Even if there's a grain of truth in the impression, is believing the worst version of it helpful? Does it make you more courageous, more temperate, or does it make you anxious or defensive or withdrawn? The Stoic goal is a life of virtue, of excellent character. Any thought that moves you away from that isn't worth your assent. Take a common worry, anxiety about a future work presentation. The impression is a loud, convincing thought. I'm going to mess this up. Everyone will see I'm not qualified. So you pause, you apply the questions. 1. Is this within my control? The thoughts of others aren't. The final reception isn't. Your preparation is. Your practice is. Showing up with integrity is. The anxiety is fixated on what you can't control. That's the first clue. 2. Is my judgment accurate? The judgment is I will fail. Is that a fact? No, it's a prediction, a fearful one. The facts are you've prepared. You know the material. You've given presentations before. The judgment is an exaggeration, not a report. 3. Is this thought beneficial? Does believing I will fail help me? It robs focus, it drains confidence, it makes the process miserable, assenting to it harms character. It feeds fear instead of cultivating courage. Answering these questions doesn't magically erase nervousness. It drains the catastrophic story of its power. It changes the narrative from "I am doomed" to "I am prepared for a challenge I don't fully control, and I will meet it with my best effort." Take a current worry of your own. Right now, it could be small. Write it down, then slowly answer the 3 questions for it. Is it about what you control? Is the story factual? Is believing it good for you? This isn't positive thinking, it's clear thinking, and in that clarity, the impression often starts to soften. Because you've stopped blindly agreeing with the lie it was telling. Your mind is like a gatekeeper, and the job is to sort every thought that comes in into 2 boxes: things that are up to me and things that are not up to me. It's the most practical filter, the Stoic idea of control, and getting this first question right is how you stop the mind's most common lie. The lie that you're responsible for things you can't actually command, or that you're a victim of them. Epictetus starts his handbook with this. He says some things are up to us and some are not. Our judgments, our impulses, our desires and aversions, what's our own doing, that's up to us. Our body, our property, reputation, our position, whatever isn't our own doing. That's not up to us, that's the foundation. Any impression that causes distress, any story that leads to anxiety or anger, involves a confusion here. You've given your assent to an impression about something not up to you. You've taken ownership of a storm you can't calm. The gatekeeper's job is to catch that. To intercept the thought says they don't respect me. The gatekeeper asks, is their respect up to me? The answer is no. Their opinion, their attitude, that's in their box. Not yours. You can act with integrity. You can communicate clearly. Those actions are in your box, but the final verdict, the feeling they hold, is in theirs. To assent to the idea that their disrespect is your problem to solve is to take a weight you were never meant to carry. That's the source of that suffering. Let's make it concrete, because the mind is clever. It disguises things. It turns actions into identities. It turns efforts into guarantees. Think about 2 thoughts that sound similar. The first, I failed. The second, I am a failure. The first one, I failed, can be accurate. It's about a specific action, an outcome, an event. It's up to you to examine it, learn from it, adjust your efforts. It's in the box of things you can work with. The second one, I am a failure, is an identity, a global label, a story that takes one event and defines your entire being. And that identity is tied to external validation, to a permanent state of rejection or lack of worth in the world's eyes. Is that up to you? Can you control how the world categorizes you? No, that identity depends on external judgments, on future outcomes you can't guarantee. To assent to I am a failure is to believe a lie about something not up to you. It's handing over the definition of yourself to forces outside your gate. Your mind will do this with everything. It will turn I am unprepared for this meeting into I am incompetent. It will turn they cancelled our plans into I am not important to anyone. It will turn the stock market dipped into my future is ruined. The practice is to catch the global label, the identity, the permanent catastrophe, and return it to the specific, the actionable, the thing that's truly yours. I am feeling unprepared for this meeting. That's a feeling I can address with study. I am disappointed our plans changed. That's a feeling I can sit with and release. The market moved. That's an event I can adapt to with prudent action. So here's an application. Think of 3 things causing you a low level of stress right now: a relationship tension, a financial concern, a lingering task. Write them down or just hold them in your mind. Now for each one, apply the filter. Ask, what part of this worry is truly up to me? Is it the other person's reaction? Or is it the clarity and kindness of my own communication? Is it the final dollar amount in my account? or is it my daily choices with the resources I have today? Is it the perfection of the completed task, or is it the next single step I can take toward it? Sort the worry into the two boxes, and then consciously withdraw your assent from the parts in the not up to me box. You don't have to fix them, you don't have to worry them into submission, you just acknowledge they're outside the gate. This act, this simple sorting, drains an immense amount of background noise. It turns down the volume on the world's chaos and turns up the signal of your own agency, because what's left in your box after this sorting is always enough to work with. It's always the starting point for a real and peaceful action. The mind has this tendency to take something small, a setback, and immediately write the full tragedy. Stoicism points to that. It's catastrophizing. A flat tire becomes proof the universe is against you. A critical comment becomes a verdict on your entire worth. That leap from event to epic disaster is where so much suffering gets made, and the discipline of assent has a counter. It's called objective representation. Seeing the thing as it is, not as your fears have dressed it up. The Stoics aimed for a graspable impression, one that matches reality without the dramatic soundtrack your emotions add. Marcus Aurelius practiced this. In his private writings, he'd remind himself, strip away the value-laden label, see the thing in its plain, factual state. He wrote, don't let the force of the impression carry you away, just say, hold on, let me see what you are, and then describe it without the added opinion. Without the superimposed headline, your mind says this is terrible, this is unbearable, this ruins everything. Those aren't descriptions, they're verdicts. They're stories you're telling about the event, not the event itself. Objective representation is removing the story and stating the facts. It's the difference between saying my career is over and saying I did not get the job I interviewed for today. The first is a catastrophic prophecy, a global identity. The second is a single, specific event, one you can work with, one that doesn't define your entire future. Take a common spiral. Your flight is cancelled. The immediate impression, fueled by stress, shouts, this is a disaster. This ruins my entire trip. I've wasted all this money. Everything is going wrong. That's the unchecked story. Now apply objective representation. Pause, breathe, and describe only what is concretely true. The flight I was booked on is no longer available. I am at the airport. I need to find another way to reach my destination. That's it. That's the situation. All the added drama about ruin and waste and everything going wrong is a narrative you layer on top. It's optional. When you see it as a logistical problem to solve rather than a personal catastrophe, your entire nervous system calms. Your energy shifts from panic to solution. This practice isn't about being cold. You can acknowledge the disappointment. I really wanted to be on that flight. This is frustrating. That's still a factual statement about your preference and your current emotion, but it's different from declaring the universe has conspired to ruin your life. One leaves you in the realm of human experience, the other casts you as the star in a tragedy. Try it with something smaller right now. Think of a minor annoyance from your week. Maybe a project at work took longer than expected. Your mind's story might be, I'm so inefficient. I'll never catch up. This is overwhelming. Now, rephrase it as a plain, factual statement. The project required more time than I initially allocated. That is all. Feel the difference in your body when you state just the fact versus when you recite the catastrophic story. The fact is manageable. The story feels like a weight. This is the power of objective description. It returns the event to its proper size. It takes the megaphone away from your anxious mind and gives you back a measuring tape. You see the thing for what it is, a thing, not a verdict, not an ending, not a symbol of everything wrong, just a thing that happened, and a thing that happened is always something you can meet. With your resources, your character, your next clear action, what current complaint of yours can you translate right now from a dramatic headline back into a simple sentence? The first thought isn't the test, it's the second one, the one you decide to believe. That's where your character is. That first thing, that impression, it just shows up. It's a reflex from your conditioning, your fears. You feel a jolt of jealousy or a quick, unkind thought about someone, a hit of insecurity. That's not a sin. It's not even a choice, it's just neurological weather, clouds passing through. You're not the clouds, you're the sky watching them. The Stoics drew that line. You're not responsible for the impression, but you are responsible for what comes after, for the judgment you make once you look at it. That's the faculty of assent. That's your power to mix them up, to think the automatic thought is you. That's a prison. Epictetus said it. He said, remember, it's not the person who insults you that does the insult. It's your judgment that they are insulting you. The event is outside. The sting, the hurt, the resentment, that's inside. That's the judgment you put on the event and agreed to carry. That separation, it's freedom. It means your worth isn't tied to the noise in your head. A thought comes, I'm not good enough. That's just an impression. Mental spam, your worth is decided by the next step. Do you open that email, believe it, let it run the show, or do you see the sender, fear incorporated, and drag it to the trash? Your character is built right there. Take a common feeling. A colleague gets public praise for work you helped with. Your name isn't said. First impression is a hot, sharp feeling. That's envy. It's involuntary. It's there, you feel it. Then the critical moment, the second thought, that's where virtue is tested. An untrained mind jumps to a story. That's unfair. They stole credit. I'm always overlooked. It's a victim story, a story of resentment. You can choose to believe that, or you can pause. Examine the impression. Is this feeling based on all the facts? Is this story helpful? Does it match who I want to be? The virtuous judgment, the second thought, might sound different. It might say, I feel overlooked. That's a natural feeling. My colleague's success doesn't erase my work. I can be happy for them and still find a way later to make sure my part is known, if that matters. That second thought is a choice, a judgment from examination, not reflex. It sees the feeling without being ruled by it. It points energy toward what's constructive, what you can control. That's how you build an inner citadel. Not by having perfect first thoughts, that's impossible, but by guarding the second one. You're the author of that chapter, not the first draft. So think about it. Can you remember a negative first thought you recently had that you chose not to believe? Maybe a suspicion about a partner's intention that was just your own insecurity. Or a thought that you'd fail before you even started. What happened when you refused to give that first thought your assent? Did the situation feel different? Did your own power in it grow? That space between the flash and the choice is where your true self is, and it's always there waiting for you to come back. Sometimes the discipline of assent, it's not just refusing a lie, it's deciding to believe something else, something stronger. You can steer your judgments. You don't have to wait for the right thought to come along. You can grow it. That's the proactive side, the as-if method. You consciously give your assent to a framing. One that fits with virtue, even if it's not your first instinct. This isn't about positive thinking you don't believe. It's not pretending. It's a choice. To line up your judgment with a rational principle, with your best self, and then to act from there. The Stoic idea of living in accordance with nature, that means living in line with our rational, social nature. So when we pick a judgment rooted in wisdom or courage or justice, we're bringing our inner world into harmony with our actual design. We're assenting to reality at its highest level. Not just at the level of that first, often fearful reaction. Marcus Aurelius did this all the time. He wrote instructions to himself. He didn't feel like dealing with a difficult person. He would tell himself, go to your task as a Roman. Go with dignity, with energy, with patience. He was choosing the judgment of a philosopher king, and then assenting to it, acting as if it were already true. That changes everything. You're not a victim of your thoughts waiting for a better one. You're the curator of your judgments, selecting the one that serves your character. To make it practical, you face a difficult, tedious task. The automatic impression is loud. This is a painful burden. This is pointless. I don't want to do this. That's the initial data. You pause, you see it, but instead of stopping there, you consciously propose a new judgment, one aligned with perseverance or duty. You say, this is an opportunity to practice focus and discipline. This is how I strengthen my will. This is my work, and I will meet it with integrity. Then you give your assent to that judgment. You choose to believe that framing, and you act as if it is true. You don't have to feel excited. You just do the task from that chosen perspective. The feeling often follows the action. Another example, you're in a conflict. The first impression is they are wrong and attacking me. I must defend myself. That's the story. The as-if practice for justice and temperance might be to assent to a different judgment. This is a person with their own perspective who likely feels unheard. My role is to understand first, then to be understood. You act as if that is your primary goal. You listen, you speak calmly. The interaction might change. Not because the other person transformed, but because your judgment, your energy was different from the start. This is how you build the muscle of virtue. Not by never feeling anger, but by feeling the heat and choosing the judgment of patience. Not by never feeling fear, but by feeling the tremor and choosing the judgment of courage. You are rehearsing your character in real time, so here's a prompt. Pick one specific challenge you know is coming today, a difficult conversation, a long commute. A pile of admin work. Now decide, which single virtuous as-if judgment could you assent to for that situation? Could it be the judgment of patience, seeing it as a test of your calm? Could it be the judgment of courage, seeing it as a chance to face something uncomfortable with resolve? Choose just one, write it down, and when the moment arrives, pause. Recall your chosen judgment, give it your full assent, act as if it is your guiding truth. Notice what shifts, not necessarily in the outer world, but in the room of your own mind. That voice in your head talking about your worth, you hear it, but is it ever really your own voice, or is it just an echo of someone else's opinion? Could be flattering, could be critical. It's one of the mind's subtle lies. It takes judgments from the outside world, and it presents them to you as internal truths. It says, they think I'm brilliant, so I must be, or they think I'm a failure, so I am, and you give your assent, not to a fact, to an external verdict. You hand over the gavel for your own self-assessment to a crowd that wasn't even in the courtroom. The desire for praise, the fear of blame, these are powerful hijackers. They hijack our assent mechanism. They create this emotional puppet show. Someone pulls a string labeled praise, and you feel elated, validated, real. Someone pulls the string labeled blame, and you feel deflated, ashamed, worthless. Your inner state becomes a direct reflection of external opinion, and that's a deeply unstable way to live. Because public opinion, it's a fickle wind. It shifts. The Stoics observed this. Seneca wrote about it. He said the applause of the crowd is not a thing to be trusted. It comes and goes without warning. One day they cheer you, the next they condemn you for the very same qualities. To build your peace of mind on that foundation, he warned, that's like building your house on sand. On the sand of a restless sea, he advised creating an internal court of appeal. You have to be your own most trusted critic and your own most honest supporter. The opinions of others, they're just evidence to consider, not verdicts to blindly accept. True assent here means pausing when you feel that surge of pride from praise, or that sting from criticism, and asking 3 questions. First, is this about what's within my control? Their opinion is not, my reaction to it is. Second, is my judgment about it accurate? Is the statement I am incompetent a fact, or is it just my interpretation of their frustration? Third, is assenting to this thought beneficial for my character? Does believing I'm only as good as my last compliment, does that make me more resilient or more fragile? Let's make it concrete. Your boss sends a terse email, questioning a decision you made. The immediate hijacked impression screams, "My boss is angry, therefore I am incompetent." That's an assent to an external verdict. It links their emotion directly to your core worth. The examined judgment, the one from your internal court, sounds different. It says, "My boss is expressing frustration. I will calmly assess if there's valid feedback here for me to learn from. My competence is not defined by this single moment of their mood." The first is a collapse. The second is an evaluation. It keeps the external event external, and it keeps your self-definition internal and stable. This applies just as much to praise. Someone says your work was genius. The unchecked impression purrs. They see my brilliance, therefore I am a genius. That feels good, but it's just as much an external hijacking. Your worth is now tied to their flattery. The examined judgment acknowledges the compliment with gratitude, but it holds a deeper truth. They enjoyed my work. I am glad. My value as a person remains the same as it was yesterday, before they said a word. This unhooking, it's not about becoming cold or ungrateful. It's about becoming free. Your sense of peace is no longer a hostage to the next review, the next comment, the next like. It's anchored in something you control. Your own reasoned evaluation of your efforts and your character. So here's a reflective prompt. Identify one area of your life right now where you know you overly rely on external approval. Is it in your creative work, waiting for the right feedback to feel it was worthwhile? Is it in your parenting, measuring your success by the opinions of others? Is it in your social life, where your sense of belonging feels conditional on being perceived a certain way? Now consider this. If you were to unhook from that external meter, what would a self-defined metric of success look like in that area? Not a metric of outcome, but of effort and virtue. Could it be showing up consistently with integrity? Could it be the courage to express an authentic idea? Could it be the patience you practice, regardless of the immediate result? That self-defined metric, that's your internal court standard, and your assent belongs there. In that quiet, steady place, not in the noisy, shifting crowd. The Stoics had a drill, a way to build resilience. They would rehearse setbacks in their minds, to inoculate themselves against panic. When the real thing happened, they called this practice premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. At first, it sounds like a recipe for anxiety. To think about what could go wrong, but that's a misunderstanding. This isn't worry. Worry is passive. It's a fearful spiral. The mind tells itself catastrophic stories, and then gives full, terrified assent to them. Premeditation is the opposite. It's an active exercise, a controlled one. You become the director of a mental simulation. Your goal is to encounter a potential challenge in the safety of your imagination, to see it clearly, and to practice withholding your assent from the emotional lie that it's unbearable. Seneca was a strong advocate. He would regularly take time to foresee life's disruptions, not to dread them, but to disarm them. He wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. By visiting a difficulty in advance, you remove the element of shock, the sting of surprise. So when the event happens, or even if it never does, you've already faced it. You've separated the raw event from the dramatic soundtrack, the one your fear wants to add. You've rehearsed your calm response. Here's how it works as a drill for assent. You choose a plausible challenge, something that could realistically happen in your life. Then, in a quiet moment, you close your eyes and you walk through it. Not as a victim of a nightmare, but as a calm observer of a scenario. The key is to focus on the facts and on your virtuous response, not on the swirling emotions. You visualize the event itself in plain terms, and then you visualize yourself pausing, breathing, applying the discipline, asking, "Is this within my control?" You see yourself accepting the new reality without the internal scream of protest, and then you see yourself focusing on the very next constructive action available. Take a modern stressor, an important virtual meeting, a presentation to key clients. Your technology fails, the screen freezes, your audio cuts out. The immediate, unchecked impression in the real moment would be a flood of panic. This is a disaster. I look incompetent. Everything is ruined. That's the story begging for your assent. Now, premeditate it tonight before it happens. See the frozen screen, hear the silence, feel that first jolt. Now, in your rehearsal, pause, state the objective reality. My video connection has failed. That is the fact. The disaster and the ruin are optional narratives. In your mental drill, watch yourself not buying those tickets. Instead, you take a breath. You switch to your phone to join the audio. You send a quick, calm chat message, apologizing for the technical issue and continuing. You focus on the content, not the perfect delivery. You see yourself handling the imperfection with poise. You have, in effect, pre-empted the false assent. You've shown your mind that the event is manageable, that your character remains intact, that the world does not end. This practice builds a kind of mental muscle memory. When a rehearsed challenge arises, there's a familiarity. Your mind doesn't go into full alarm mode. It recognizes the terrain. It recalls the path you walked in your meditation, the path of calm assent to what is, and focused action on what can be done. So here is a small practice. Tonight, before you sleep, spend just 2 minutes. Pick one manageable challenge you might face tomorrow. It could be a difficult conversation you've been avoiding, a crowded commute, a task you're likely to procrastinate on. Close your eyes, premeditate it. See the situation unfold. See the first flash of frustration or anxiety, and then see yourself creating that pause, withholding assent from the catastrophic version, and choosing a single, clear, next right action. You are not inviting trouble. You are building an inner refuge, so that no matter what the day brings, you have already visited that room in your mind. And you know the way through. Your mind wants security. It tells you the storm you're in right now, that it's going to last forever. Stoicism points to the seasons. It's a subtle lie, one we agree to every day, the lie of permanence. When something's hard, it's not just that it's difficult. It feels like it will always be difficult. This pain won't ever fade. This frustration is my new reality, and it's permanent. And then the other side, in a moment of joy, of success, the whisper says this high should last, that this feeling starts a new chapter that won't change. Both are illusions, and believing them causes suffering. The discipline of assent meets this with a basic truth. Everything flows. The philosopher Heraclitus said it, panta rhei, all is in flux. You can't step into the same river twice. The Stoics built on that. To agree that something is permanent is to argue with the universe itself. It's believing a fiction, a comforting or terrifying one, instead of the changing truth. Marcus Aurelius kept returning to this. He'd list how transient everything is, like a mantra. He wrote to consider the life you've lived as already complete. Turn it into a story and review it. He noted how the applause in the public hall goes silent so fast, how even the memory of great emperors fades into legend, then a footnote. He applied it to pain too. Pain is an evil to the body or the soul. If it's to the body, let the body complain. The soul can stay undisturbed, because the soul can see the pain for what it is, a sensation. And like all sensations, it arises, it's here, and it will pass. To give your assent to the thought, this pain is my forever state, is to chain your soul to a temporary visitor. It's making a guest the permanent owner of your house. Withholding assent from this will never end is an act of self-compassion. It doesn't deny the feeling you have right now. It denies the false story about how long it will last. It says, I feel this grief deeply right now, but I don't believe the story that this depth is my eternal home. It says, this frustration is intense in this moment, but I don't endorse the forecast that my whole future will be colored by it. That creates a space to breathe. To endure, you're not fighting the feeling, you're just refusing to sign a contract that says you have to feel it forever. Apply this to both poles, first to negative states. A deep loss brings a wave of grief. The mind's lie is that this hollow feeling is all you'll ever know again, that the world will always be gray. The disciplined assent pauses. It acknowledges the raw reality of the loss, but it withholds agreement from the prophecy of endless gray. It remembers, even if it can't feel it yet, that the human heart, while forever changed, isn't forever broken. It can heal, it can find new meaning alongside the absence. This isn't about rushing the process. It's about not cementing yourself in the darkest part of it. Now apply it to positive states. You achieve a long-sought goal. There's euphoria, pride, a sense of arrival. The mind's lie here is that you've arrived at a permanent plateau. That this success defines you now and forever, that you should always feel this good. Agreeing to that lie sets you up for a fall, because the feeling will fade. The applause will stop, the project will end. If you believed it was permanent, its passing feels like a failure, like a loss of identity. The disciplined response is to savor the joy fully, but to withhold assent from the story of permanence. To see it as a beautiful season, one that will, in time, give way to another, that cultivates equanimity, a steady inner ground that isn't devastated by winter or desperately clinging to summer. Think back, can you recall a past distress that felt absolutely endless at the time? A heartbreak, a period of uncertainty, a failure that seemed to define you. Sit with that memory for a moment. Now, from where you are now, you can see it did pass. The sharp edges softened, the story changed, you grew around it. The feeling that was so overwhelming then is now a chapter in your history, not the whole book. That's the living proof your mind needs for the next trial. The next time that inner voice insists this is forever, you can call on that memory. You can say, "I've felt this certainty of permanence before, and I was wrong. This too is a season, and I have the strength to weather it, knowing it won't last." Anger has a very convincing voice. It tells you exactly who's to blame and why they deserve your fury. In that moment, the story it tells feels like the only truth. That's the hijack, where a feeling doesn't just visit, it takes over. It grabs the microphone and starts broadcasting this urgent, compelling narrative. And your mind, under its influence, is desperate to agree, to believe that feeling is a factual report on the world. But emotions aren't facts, they're interpretations. They're like internal weather responding to a mix of pressures. Your history, your expectations, how tired you are. The Stoics called a passion, a pathos, exactly that. A flawed judgment, an excessive impulse you've already agreed to. You felt a first movement, a twinge of hurt, a spark of irritation, and in the rush, you gave your full, unchecked assent to the story that came with it. This person meant to disrespect me. This is an injustice against me. The emotion is the result of that assent. It's the consequence of believing the hijackers' broadcast. So the discipline of assent here is counterintuitive. It asks you to notice the emotion as a signal, not a commander. The feeling is data, important data. It's telling you something has happened that you've judged as significant, but the narrative it's screaming, that's the interpretation. That's what you need to examine before you buy it. This requires a subtle shift in language. It's the difference between saying "I feel rejected" and "I have been rejected." The first is an honest report. It's a factual statement about your internal weather. The second is a claim about external reality. It requires evidence. The feeling of rejection can come from 100 places. A friend too busy to call back, a terse message from a colleague, your own insecurity on a low-energy day. To immediately assent to "I have been rejected" is to take the feeling story as gospel. You skip the investigation entirely, so when the hijack begins, when sadness whispers that nothing matters, or anxiety shouts that everything is falling apart, your first act of defiance is linguistic. It's to name the feeling out loud if you can, to say, this is anger, this is fear, this is shame, just that. You're identifying the weather pattern. By naming it, you create a sliver of space. You are the observer naming the rain, not just the person getting drenched. Psychologists call it name it to tame it. The Stoics would have called it the first step of withholding assent. Try it with a recent flare-up. Maybe you snapped at someone over something small. Replay the moment just before the snap. What was the feeling? Frustration, feeling disrespected, under pressure. Now, what was the story that feeling was telling you? It was likely something like, they never listen. I have to do everything myself. This is unfair. That story felt true because the emotion was powerful. But was it the whole objective truth, or was it the hijacker's narrow, urgent version of events? Your practice is this. The next time a strong emotion rises, a wave of grief, a spike of jealousy, a slow burn of resentment, pause before you believe its headline. Take that one breath and silently label the feeling. This is sadness, this is envy, this is resentment. Don't judge it, don't follow its first suggested action. Just name it. In that simple act, you reclaim the microphone. You turn down the volume on the hijacker's broadcast just enough to hear your own calmer voice, the one that can now ask the questions. Is this about what I control? Is this story accurate? Is believing it good for me? The emotion might not vanish, but its power to dictate your reality begins to fade. There's a river in your mind. A stream of thoughts, impressions, stories. Usually you're in the water, grabbing at every leaf that goes past, believing each one is urgent, is you, is true. The discipline of assent starts on the bank. It begins when you sit and watch the leaves pass without needing to claim every single one. That's the witness position. Observing your own mental stream without jumping in. It's the step that comes before rational examination, because you can't question a thought you're already drowning in. You have to see it first from a slight distance. The Stoics pointed to this inner observer. They called it the ruling faculty, the hegemonicon. It's the core of you that isn't any single thought or feeling. It's the part that can notice you're angry without being the anger itself. It's the inner citadel, the quiet room at the center. From this position, you're no longer a passive passenger on the river. You become the one on the bank, watching the currents, noticing which leaves are carried by fear, which by old habit, which by real concern. That creates space. The space between the leaf appearing and your hand reaching out to grab it. Epictetus hinted at this. He said, don't let the force of the impression carry you away. Say to it, wait, let me see what you are. That let me see is the act of the witness. You're not arguing with the thought yet, not believing it or disbelieving it. You're just turning your attention to it as if it were an object, a leaf on the water. This detachment isn't coldness, it's clarity. It's what lets you then ask the three questions. Is this mine to control? Is it accurate? Is it helpful? Without that first step of witnessing, those questions just get shouted by the part of you that's already caught in the current. They lose their power. Here's a simple way to practice. A 1-minute mindfulness technique you can do anywhere. Set a timer for 60 seconds. Sit comfortably. Close your eyes if you can. Your only task is to notice thoughts, not to stop them, not to analyze them, just to notice them arise, and as each one comes, silently label it thinking. That's all. A feeling of anxiety arises, you note thinking. A memory pops up, you note thinking. A plan for later appears, you note thinking. You're not following the content down the river. You're just acknowledging the leaf as it floats into view and letting it float on by. You are practicing being the bank, not the water. In that minute, you are strengthening your hegemonicon. You are building the muscle of the witness. This skill transforms daily moments. You're in a tense meeting. A sharp comment is made. You feel the heat rise. The old pattern is to become the heat, to be the offended person. The witness practice creates a micro-pause. You feel the heat and you note anger is here. That simple acknowledgement creates a centimeter of space. In that space, you remember you are not the anger. You are the one feeling it, and from that slight distance, you can choose a response. Not a reaction. The difference is everything. So here's a direct prompt. Right after this ends, before you move on to the next thing, pause. Set a timer on your phone for 1 minute. Sit quietly and just watch the river. Label each thought thinking as it comes. Don't judge yourself when you get carried away by a leaf. Just gently return to the bank. Notice what that feels like, to observe without owning, to witness without wrestling. That feeling, that space, is the ground where your freedom to choose your judgments grows. When your mind starts telling that story of doom, you call its bluff. You ask the Stoic question, what's the very worst that could actually happen? It sounds dangerous, like you're inviting the fear in. But in practice, it's the opposite. It's a stress test for those impressions. You drag the shadowy monster out from under the bed and look at it in the light. And there, it often shrinks down to a manageable size, even an ordinary one. The Stoics weren't denying difficulty. They were about facing it with clear eyes. And this question forces that clarity. It moves you from the vague cloud, this idea that everything is ruined, over to specific, concrete possibilities. And in that specificity, you find your power. It's like the premeditation of adversity, but in reverse. You're not imagining a challenge in advance to prepare. You're taking a challenge your mind is already screaming about and demanding it show its cards. You ask for the worst-case scenario, not as a fearful fantasy, but as a logical endpoint. And then you sit with that endpoint, you examine it, you ask, if that happened, what would I do? Could I bear it? And the answer almost always is yes. Human resilience is vast, and the actual worst outcome is rarely the apocalyptic story our anxiety tells first. Seneca wrote about this kind of examination. He said we should anticipate not that all things will go wrong, but that they might. And then, he said, we should reassure ourselves by looking at what we fear and saying, is this what you were afraid of? Why, this is nothing, or at least it is something I can endure. He was pointing to that gap between the imagined catastrophe and the real, manageable hardship. The question bridges that gap. Take a common modern anxiety, public speaking. The unchecked impression is a loud, convincing narrative. I'll freeze up. My mind will go blank. Everyone will see me as a fraud. I'll be humiliated and my reputation will be ruined. That's the story begging for your assent. It's this cascade of social and professional ruin. Now apply the stress test. Pause. Ask, what is the very worst that could truly, realistically happen? Not in a horror movie, but in this room with these people today. Strip away the dramatic layers. The realistic worst outcome might be, I stumble over my words for a minute. I lose my place in my notes. I feel embarrassed and my face turns red. That's it. That's the probable flaw, not total ruin, not career annihilation. An awkward few minutes, a feeling of embarrassment which passes. Now look at that realistic worst case. Can you handle it? Can you survive a few minutes of awkwardness? The answer is obvious. Of course you can. You have before. Everyone has. By facing the realistic worst, you drain the impression of its catastrophic power. You see the monster is just a shadow, and your capacity to handle the reality is far greater than you feared. Apply it to a smaller, daily worry, the anxiety before sending a difficult email. The impression says, they'll be furious, this will destroy our working relationship, I'll get in serious trouble. The stress test asks for the realistic worst. The realistic worst might be, they'll reply with a curt, disagreeing message. We might have a brief, tense call to clarify. I'll feel uncomfortable for a day. That's manageable. It's a professional disagreement, not a professional execution. Seeing that allows you to send the email with more calm. because you've already accepted the plausible downside. So here's a reflective prompt. Identify one current low to medium grade anxiety, not your deepest fear but a nagging worry about an upcoming event, a conversation, a task. Take out a piece of paper or open a note. Write down the impression story, the doom narrative, then beneath it write the header, the realistic worst, and force yourself to write the most probable, non-dramatic, bad outcome. Not the fantastical one, the plausible one. Look at that line. Now ask yourself, if that happened, what is the first thing I would do? How would I handle it? You'll likely find a path, a simple next step, and in seeing that path, the anxious fog begins to clear, because you've moved from a victim of a story to the author of a plan. Many of the mind's most persistent lies start with one word: should. He should be nicer, this should be easier, my boss should recognize my work, the world should be fair. That word is a trap. It's a demand you place on reality, a rigid expectation for how people or events or life itself ought to behave. And when you give your assent to that demand, you sign a contract for frustration. Because reality rarely delivers on your personal list of shoulds, the Stoics saw this clearly. To assent to a should is to judge the external world as failing, according to your own private rulebook, and since the external world is not up to you, you're arguing with what is. You're giving your energy to a fight you can't win. Epictetus put it in stark terms. He said, "Are you not acting like a fool when you want things to happen not as they do happen, when you expect a fig from a thorn bush? If you want a fig, you go to a fig tree. You don't stand in front of a thorn bush and demand it produce sweet fruit. That's madness, yet that's what we do. We stand in front of a thorn bush of a situation, a difficult person, a traffic jam, a delay, and we scream internally that it should be a fig tree, that it should be different. Our frustration isn't caused by the thorn bush being a thorn bush. It's caused by our stubborn, assented to belief that it owes us figs. Every should is a judgment. A judgment about something not fully within your control. Another person's behavior, the flow of traffic, the pace of a project, the weather. When you think they should be more considerate, you are taking their consideration, which is in their control, and making its absence a source of your own suffering. You are handing them the remote control for your inner peace. Withholding assent from a should doesn't mean you become passive. It doesn't mean you stop preferring things to be better. It means you stop demanding that your preference be a law of the universe. You shift from this should not be happening to this is happening. That second statement is just a fact. A neutral observation. From that place, accepting the fact, you can then ask the only useful question. Given that this is happening, what is the wise thing for me to do now? The constructive thing, the virtuous thing. You move from being a protester outside of reality to being a navigator within it. Let's make this practical. Your morning commute is a crawl. The unchecked impression, fueled by a should, says this traffic should not be here. This is a waste of my time. My whole morning is ruined. You have assented to a story of frustration. The examined judgment, the one that withholds assent from the should, sounds different. It says traffic is a common occurrence on this road. This is the current reality. I cannot change the traffic, but I can choose how I use this time. From there, you might assent to a new, constructive judgment. I will listen to an audiobook I enjoy, or I will use this time to plan my day, or I will simply practice patience. The situation hasn't changed, the cars are still stopped. But your inner world has transformed from a battleground to a workshop. Another example, a family member is consistently late. The should chain is powerful. They should be on time, they should respect my schedule. Each time they're late, that chain yanks, and you feel the jerk of resentment. To break it, you pause. You see the should for what it is, a demand on another person's behavior, which is not yours to command. You can still prefer punctuality. You can still communicate your preference calmly. But you withhold your assent from the story that their lateness is a personal affront, or a violation of some cosmic law, you accept the reality, this person often runs late. Given that reality, how do I want to proceed? Maybe you bring a book to read, maybe you schedule buffer time, maybe you decide the relationship is worth the occasional wait. You are no longer a hostage to their watch, you have taken back your inner peace. So here's a practice for today, a reflective prompt. For the rest of the day, carry a small notebook or use a notes app. Your task is to catch yourself in the act. Every time you hear that word "should" in your mind or say it out loud about an external event or another person's behavior, jot it down. Just the statement, "My coworker should reply to emails faster," the line "at the store should move more quickly," "the news should be less depressing." Don't judge yourself for having the thought. Just collect the data. By the end of the day, aim to have at least 3 of these should statements written down. Then, tonight, look at your list. For each one, perform the Stoic interrogation. First, ask, is this should about something within my control? The answer will almost certainly be no. Second, ask, what is the factual reality stripped of this should? Just state what is. My coworker often takes 2 days to reply. The line has 5 people ahead of me. The news contains many reports of conflict. Third, ask, having accepted that reality, what is one small action available to me? Or one shift in perspective. This practice trains you to spot the demand before it becomes a distress. It turns the should from a command into a curiosity. And in that space, you find your freedom. Your mind makes labels. It takes a complicated situation and gives it a name, a bad day, an insult, a disaster. The discipline of assent is about stopping that. It's about seeing the label for what it is, a judgment, a story that's been shrunk down to one word. And when you agree to that label, you're agreeing to the whole story. You stop looking, the case is closed. You've locked yourself into a story, and it's often not true. Labels feel efficient. They help us move through the world, but for your own peace, they're traps. They take a bunch of separate events and glue them together. They make one solid block. That block is heavy, it's hard to carry, and you can't really look at it anymore. The Stoic goal was to see things as they are. To strip away the extra stuff, the cultural meaning, your own history, the dramatic name you give it, to see the thing itself, not the label stuck to its forehead. Take the label insult. Someone says something, a certain tone. Your mind takes the words, the look on their face, your own past, and it makes the label. Insult, case closed. You've been insulted. Now you have to feel a certain way, wounded, angry. You have to react. The whole script plays out from that one agreed upon word. But what if you stopped the machine? What if you didn't put that tag on it right away? You'd have to look at the pieces, the specific words they used. The tone of voice, which could mean different things, your own immediate feeling, maybe surprise, maybe hurt. These are all separate parts, a collection of facts. Not one fused together verdict. When you see the parts, the label insult might not fit. Maybe it was a bad joke. Maybe it was their own frustration coming out. A misunderstanding. The label shuts down that possibility. It demands one reaction. Seeing the parts gives you a choice. This works for positive labels too. They have their own danger. The label genius after a success. It feels good, but it's the same process. It takes a specific moment of good work, solid preparation, maybe some luck, and it glues them into an identity. Genius, if you agree to that, you're setting yourself up. Now you have to be that every time. The pressure builds. The fear of being found out, of not being a genius, grows. It's more peaceful to see the success for what it is. I prepared well. I executed the plan. The conditions were right. That's a story of action and circumstance. Not a fixed identity. Let's take a common one, a bad day. You say it, you feel the weight of it, but what is a bad day, really? It's never one thing. It's a sequence. You miss the bus, you get a critical email, you spill your coffee, you forget your lunch. Each one is a separate event, something you can handle. The label bad day rolls them all into one ball. It dyes your whole perception with that color. The Discipline of Assent asks you to take that label apart. To lay the pieces out side by side. I missed the bus, so I was late. I got some critical feedback in an email. I knocked over my coffee. I didn't bring my lunch. These are facts. Some are inconveniences. One is feedback you can use. One is a small mess to clean up. None of them, on their own, can define 12 hours of your life. Only the label you stick on them can do that. So here's something to try. Your challenge is to catch yourself using a big label. It could be about your job, calling it a dead end, or a relationship, calling it complicated, your own mood, calling it depressed, a situation, calling it hopeless. When you hear that label in your mind or say it out loud, pause. Take a piece of paper, open a note, write the label at the top, then underneath break it down. What are the specific, factual pieces that led to this label? List them plainly, not as judgments, just as things that happened, as conditions that exist. You might find the label starts to crack. It loses its solid power. Because you're not facing a giant called bad day anymore. You're facing a series of small, specific events, and you know how to meet those, one clear fact at a time. Scrolling through these curated highlights, you can feel that thought settle in. Their life is better than mine. It's a mental fabrication, a story built on a handful of pixels. Your mind creates this narrative, and then, with a simple agreement, you accept it as a full report on reality. That's envy's engine. It runs on a comparative lie. The lie that someone else's circumstances are a measure of your own lack. And every time you give your assent to that impression, you fuel it. You agree to live inside a fiction. Envy doesn't start with the other person's success. It starts in the split second after you perceive it. The raw impression is just data. A friend bought a new home. A colleague got a promotion. An acquaintance seems perpetually joyful in their travels. That's the neutral event. The envy begins when you layer on a judgment. You interpret their good fortune as evidence of your own shortcoming. You assent to the story that their external gain is your internal loss, that their highlight reel is the full movie, while yours is stuck on the outtakes. It's a double deception. First, you believe you're seeing their whole truth. Second, you believe that what they have is the very definition of good that you should be chasing. The Stoics saw this. They called external things wealth, status, reputation, even health preferred indifference. They might be preferable, but they are not good in themselves. The only true good is virtue, the excellence of your own character, your wisdom, courage, justice, self-control. Everything else is just material to practice those virtues with. When you envy someone's new car or their perfect vacation photos, you are, in Stoic terms, envying the props. You're mistaking the set decoration for the quality of the play. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself of this. He wrote about how much time he gains who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does or thinks, but only at what he does himself to make it just and holy. His focus was inward on his own work, his own character. Comparing his external trappings to another's was a pointless distraction from the only arena that mattered. Seneca warned against this poison of comparison. He observed that we are often more upset by the success of those close to us than by strangers, because their proximity makes the comparison feel more personal, more urgent. He advised a radical shift, to look not at what others have but at what you have, and more importantly at who you are. To see another's fortune as an external event, like the weather, that has no bearing on your capacity to live with integrity and purpose right where you are. So the discipline of assent comes in here. You catch the comparative impression the moment it forms. You feel that familiar twist, that hollow sense of why them and not me. That's the signal, that's the impression asking for your agreement. Your practice is to pause, to withhold that immediate assent, and to interrogate the impression with the Stoic questions. First, is this about what I control? Their life, their achievements, their social media feed, those are not up to you. your judgment about them and your own actions are. Second, is my judgment accurate? Is the story their life is better based on complete facts? You are comparing your behind the scenes with all its struggles and doubts to their carefully edited highlight reel. You have no access to their private anxieties, their hidden costs, their own internal battles. The judgment is based on a fiction, a curated illusion. Third, is assenting to this thought beneficial for my character? Does believing I am lesser because of their gain make me more just, more courageous, more temperate? No, it makes me resentful, small, and distracted from my own path. Once you've withheld assent from the lie, you can reframe it. Instead of letting envy fester, use it as a diagnostic signal. That pang is often pointing at a deeper desire, not for their specific car or job, but for a quality you associate with it. Transform the envy into a question about your own character. The impression says, I want their luxurious freedom. The examined question becomes, what does freedom mean to me? Is it financial security? Is it time autonomy? How can I cultivate the virtues of prudence and discipline to move toward a version of that in my own life, on my own terms? The impression says, I want their apparent confidence. The question becomes, what does courage look like in my current challenges? Where can I practice speaking up or taking a small risk today? You are not stealing their virtue. You are using the spark of your attention to ignite your own development. You are redirecting energy from a fictional competition back into the real work of building your inner citadel. So here's a reflective prompt. Think of one recent specific pang of envy. Maybe it was seeing a vacation photo or hearing about a career milestone. Hold that moment in your mind. Now consciously transform it. Ask yourself, what quality did I instinctively admire in that scene? Was it their creativity, their apparent peace, their adventurous spirit? Name the virtue, not the object. Then ask the developmental question. What is one small, concrete action I can take this week to cultivate a seed of that same quality in my own life, in my current circumstances? This shifts you from a passive consumer of comparison to an active architect of your character. The envy becomes not a poison, but a compass, pointing you back to your own work. You're probably safe right now, you're whole, but your mind is lying to you. It's telling you stories about yesterday, things you regret, or about tomorrow, things you worry about. Stories about a past you can't change and a future you can't see. And when you agree with those stories, you leave the present. You leave the only place where your power actually exists. The Stoics saw this. They saw mental time travel as a main source of unease. We agree to be haunted by ghosts of what was, shadows of what might be. And we treat them as urgent realities. We give them our emotional energy right now. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this. He wrote to himself, confine yourself to the present, he said. You can abandon the future and the past, wipe out the imagination of it. He wasn't saying be ignorant. He wasn't saying don't plan. He was pointing to a distinction. Planning for the future is a present moment action. Worrying about the future is a present moment agreement with a fearful story. Learning from the past is a present moment reflection. Being consumed by regret is a present moment agreement with a story of permanent failure. Your faculty of assent only works in the now. You can't give your agreement to an event that isn't happening. You can only assent to the thought about that event, and that thought is happening right now. So when you feel shame over a mistake from last week, you're not assenting to the past event. You're assenting to the story your mind is telling about it right now. The story that says that mistake defines you, that it was unforgivable, that its consequences are eternal. That story is a present moment impression, and you have the power right now to see it for what it is, a memory wrapped in a judgment, not a truth you must carry. The same is true for anxiety. Anxiety about tomorrow's meeting or next month's bills. The anxiety isn't about the future event. It's about the catastrophic story your mind is spinning about it right now. You're giving your assent to a prediction dressed up as a fact, and in doing that, you pay the emotional price for a disaster that hasn't happened, that may never come. It drains your present power. It takes energy you could use to prepare, to rest, to connect, and it spends that energy on a fictional currency. Your mind becomes a time machine. Stuck in two gears, reverse and fast forward, and you miss the landscape of your actual life passing by the window, so the practice is one of gentle, firm recall. To notice when your thoughts have left the station, to recognize the destination, and to choose not to buy a ticket for that journey. A simple way to start is with labeling. When a painful thought arises, pause, ask silently, is this a memory or is this a prediction? Just name it. This thought is a memory. This feeling is a prediction. That act of naming creates a gap. It weakens the thought's claim to be reporting on your current reality. It reveals it as a mental artifact, a souvenir from a trip you're no longer on, or a brochure for a trip you may never take. Then you can apply the discipline. You can ask, is this memory or prediction about something within my control right now? The past is fixed, the future is uncertain, but my judgment about them is happening now, and that I can work with. Is my judgment about this memory accurate? Is the story I'm telling about that old failure the whole truth, or just the version my shame wants to tell? Is this prediction beneficial? Does believing this worried story help me meet the present moment with courage and clarity? Often, the answer is no, and in seeing that, you can gently return. You can withdraw your assent from the time-traveling narrative and place your attention back on what is actually here, the feel of your feet on the floor, the sound of the air moving, the next single task in front of your hands. Here's a direct practice, a 2-minute anchor. Set a timer. For those 120 seconds, your only task is to notice present sensory input. Look around, silently name 3 things you see in detail: the grain of the wood on your desk, the way the light falls on the wall, the color of a book spine. Listen, name 2 things you hear: the hum of a device, the sound of your own breath. Feel 1 thing you can touch, the texture of your sleeve, the solidity of the chair beneath you. Your mind will wander. It will try to pull you into a memory, a plan, a worry. That's its job. Your job is to notice it has wandered. Label that wandering thought memory or prediction, and without judgment, guide your attention back to 1 more sensory detail. This isn't about achieving perfect focus. It's about exercising the muscle of present moment awareness. It's about practicing where your assent truly belongs, in the only time and place you can ever actually live. A headache comes, you feel it start, and right away your mind can build a story of being incapable, of frustration, of how unfair it is. Stoicism helps you take that apart. It asks you to separate the physical signal itself from the mental commentary you put on top. That commentary, that's where the extra suffering is. The sensation is one thing, a tightness, a throbbing, that's the impression. The judgment you add, this is unbearable, this ruins everything, why me? That's your assent. And that assent turns a manageable feeling into a full personal crisis. The Stoics were focused on this split. They called physical pain an evil to the body, but not necessarily to the soul. Your soul, your ruling part, only gets harmed when it agrees to a harmful judgment about the pain, when it assents to the idea that the pain is an intolerable injustice. Epictetus dealt with this directly. He had a physical limitation himself. He told his students lameness is an impediment to the leg, not to the will. The body could be held back, but the mind's ability to choose its judgments that stayed free. His focus was always on what was up to us. The sensation of pain isn't fully up to us. It arrives, but our opinion about it, what we tell ourselves about it, that is completely within our control. This isn't about denying you feel it. It's about refusing to amplify it with a story of catastrophe. Think of 2 people with the same minor injury, a sprained ankle. One meets it with the judgment, "This is terrible, my week is ruined, I can't do anything." They give full assent to that story. Their mental suffering piles on top of the physical discomfort. They feel like a victim. The other person feels the same throb, the same limitation. But they pause, they describe the sensation in neutral terms. There's swelling, there's tenderness when I put weight on it. Their judgment is on what's up to them. I need to rest it, use ice, adjust my plans. The physical sensation is the same. The lived experience is completely different. The difference is in the assent given to the mental story around the pain. We do this all the time with smaller signals. Tiredness in the afternoon. The unchecked impression, the one we usually agree with, says, "I'm exhausted, I can't focus, the rest of the day is wasted." That's a story. It's a judgment that takes a bodily signal and makes it a verdict on your whole capacity. The disciplined approach hears the same signal. The body is indicating a need for rest or fuel. The judgment becomes, "I'm feeling low energy. I'll take a short break, drink some water, then focus on the one most important task." You move from helpless frustration to a resourceful response. This practice needs attention to language. The words you use inside shape the experience. Saying "my back is killing me" is an assent to a dramatic, life-threatening story about a muscle ache. Saying "I feel a sharp tension in my lower back" is a factual report. The first pulls you into victimhood. The second keeps you in the realm of observable sensation, which you can then address calmly. So here's a simple practice. In the next day, you'll almost certainly feel a minor physical discomfort, a hunger pang, a stiff neck, a wave of fatigue. When you notice it, pause. Before your mind starts its usual complaint, try to describe the sensation to yourself using only neutral, observational language. Where exactly do you feel it? What's its texture? Dull, sharp, heavy? Is it constant or does it pulse? Just collect the data, like a scientist noting a reading. See if you can hold that description for 30 seconds without adding the story of why it's bad or what it means about your day. In that space, you're practicing the discipline of assent. You're feeling the signal without broadcasting the catastrophe. And you might find the signal itself is far easier to bear when it's not wrapped in a story of suffering. The mind's first draft when something hard happens is often a story about being uniquely persecuted. Why does this always happen to me? It feels true. It feels personal. You take a random event and you weave it into a narrative where you're the central target, where the universe is being unfair specifically to you. And when you give your assent to that story, the weight of the hardship doubles. You're not just dealing with the event itself anymore. You're also carrying the heavy cloak of victimhood. The Stoics saw this as an error, a profound error in judgment, and they proposed a shift, a radical shift in perspective, to see events not as personal attacks, but as part of an impersonal, natural order. A flat tire, an illness, a financial setback, these aren't arrows shot at you. They're occurrences, things that happen within the flow of life to human beings everywhere. Your experience of them, that feeling of uniqueness, is actually universal. Marcus Aurelius trained himself in this daily. He wrote that we should accept everything that happens as necessarily happening. And happening somehow for the good of the whole. He saw his own challenges as threads in a larger tapestry woven by universal nature. This wasn't blind optimism. It was about removing a layer, the layer of personal grievance. When you stop seeing an event as a why me moment, you strip it of its power to insult you. You see it for what it is, a thing that happened, and a thing that happened is something you can meet without the added drama, without that feeling of being uniquely persecuted. This is where withholding assent becomes strength. An immense strength. You feel the initial sting, the frustration, but you pause, you refuse to sign the contract. The contract that says this event is proof of your bad luck or the universe's malice. You look at it with the eyes of a philosopher. Not everything that happens is good. But to interpret it as a personal targeting is to add a story that isn't there. It's to believe a lie about your place in the world, a lie that says you should be exempt. Exempt from the common human experience of difficulty. Take a flat tire on a rainy day. The unchecked narrative is a cascade of personal injustice. Of course this happens to me. My day is ruined. Everything always goes wrong for me. That story amplifies the misery. It makes you a character in a tragedy. The Stoic refrain begins by withholding assent from that story. It states the facts plainly. A tire has lost pressure. It is raining. I am on the side of the road. These are conditions, not verdicts. This happens to people every day. It is part of the reality of driving, and from that neutral ground, your energy can flow towards solution. You call for help, you wait, you adjust your schedule. The event is the same, but your inner world is not at war with reality anymore. It's engaged with it. This applies to larger hardships too: a professional rejection, the end of a relationship, an unexpected loss. The why me story screams for your belief. It insists this is a unique punishment. The disciplined mind learns to hear that scream but not to obey it. It asks a question: is this truly a targeting of me? Or is this simply how life unfolds sometimes for everyone? It looks for the universal human thread in the pain. This doesn't negate the pain, it contextualizes it. It places your experience back into the shared stream of human existence, rather than isolating you on an island of perceived persecution. And that connection, strangely, is a source of resilience. You are not alone in your suffering. You are participating in the human condition. And within that condition, your power lies not in being exempt from challenge, but in how you meet it. So here's a prompt, a reflective one. Think of a past setback, large or small, where you felt that sharp sense of why me. In your mind, re-narrate that event. Strip away the frame of personal targeting. Describe it as a neutral observer might, not as something that happened to you because you are you, but as something that happened. As events do, then, identify one way that releasing that personal grievance narrative could have changed your response in that moment. This practice doesn't erase the past. It trains your mind for the next inevitable challenge, to see it not as a plot against you, but as the next piece of material for building your character. Not every impression gets a full yes. Some get just a whisper, others get a no. The wise mind measures its agreement. It knows that giving a huge, catastrophic level of assent to something trivial is like using a fire hose on a single houseplant. You waste the energy, you flood the room. The Stoics called this practical wisdom, phronsis. It's the skill of calibrating your inner response, matching the scale of your mental and emotional agreement to the actual scale of the event. Right-sizing your reaction. A spilled coffee on your desk is a minor thing. It gets a small, practical assent. Yes, that happened. I'll clean it up, and that's where the assent ends. It doesn't get the full drama, the story about clumsiness ruining your whole morning, but a serious personal loss. That's a profound event that warrants a deeper assent. A more spacious one. Yes, this is a significant change. This hurts. This will take time. The assent here acknowledges the true weight without adding the extra narrative. The story about a ruined life or a hopeless future. The virtue is in the proportionality, not treating a paper cut like a broken leg. This connects to another idea. The reserve clause. You engage fully with the world. You plan, you work, you care for people, but you do it with a quiet understanding held in reserve. You understand the ultimate importance of these externals is relative. Compared to cultivating your own character, your virtue, even big external events hold a different weight. You give your best effort, but you withhold your final peace of mind from the outcome. You assent to your own action, but you reserve full judgment on whether the result is good or bad in the grand scheme. This creates a buffer. It lets you engage with life passionately, yet remain undisturbed inside by its shifts. let's make it practical, a common distortion. A minor social slight, someone doesn't reply to your text for a few hours. The unchecked impression, the one screaming for your assent, calls this a major betrayal. It tells a story of disrespect, of being ignored, of your importance diminishing. You give that story a 10 on your mental engagement scale, your whole evening gets consumed. Checking your phone, rehearsing conversations, that knot in your stomach. The discipline of proportionality asks you to downgrade that assent, to right-size it. You pause, you examine the factual reality. The data point is one text hasn't gotten a reply in a few hours. That's all. The stories of betrayal, the disrespect, those are massive interpretations you've layered on top. A proportional assent might be a 2. You acknowledge the fact they haven't replied yet. Then you attach a smaller, more probable story. They're likely busy. Or they saw it and will reply later. You give a whisper of assent to that neutral possibility, and then you let it go. You return your mental energy to the present. You've taken a potential 10 and returned it to its proper size, a 2. The emotional drain stops, the knot loosens. Your challenge is to apply this scale. Think of 3 current concerns on your mind. Anything, a work deadline, a relationship tension, a financial decision, a household chore. Write them down or just hold them clearly. Now for each one, assign it a number, 1 to 10. 1 is a minor, passing thought. 10 is a truly significant, life-altering event. Be ruthlessly honest with the facts. Is that looming deadline really an 8? Or is it a 5 when you consider you've handled similar projects before? Is that awkward conversation a 9? Or is it a 4 when you remember your long history of resolving misunderstandings? Now the crucial second step. For each item, ask, does the amount of mental energy and emotional weight I'm giving it match its number? Are you spending 9-level worry on a 4-level problem? This mismatch is where we leak our peace. The practice of proportionality is bringing your inner investment back into alignment with the outer reality. It's choosing to give a 4-level event only a 4-level amount of your soul's attention. And in that recalibration, you reclaim a vast reserve of quiet energy. It's easy to assume your thoughts are your own, but how many of them are borrowed, inherited from your family, your friends, the culture around you? We're swimming in a sea of collective judgments. What success looks like, what a good life requires, what we should want, what we should fear. Often we don't even notice we've agreed. We've just absorbed the story our tribe tells. And we repeat it as if we discovered it ourselves. That's the social mirror, a powerful force shaping your inner citadel, often without your conscious permission. So the discipline of assent here becomes a kind of social courage, the willingness to look at a widely held belief and ask, is this impression true? Not is it popular. Not is it comfortable, but is it rational? Is it virtuous? The Stoics admired the sage, someone in the world but not of it. Their peace didn't come from isolation. It came from a profound inner independence. They could participate in society, follow its just laws, contribute to their community, all while maintaining a sovereign judgment. Their inner citadel had its own laws, based on nature and reason, not the shifting winds of public opinion. To practice this now is to recognize the invisible curriculum. The unspoken rules of your social circle. Maybe it's the assumption that a certain salary equals security, or that owning a home is a mandatory milestone. Maybe it's a collective anxiety about a political outcome, or a shared disdain for a certain type of person. These are group impressions, waiting for your individual assent. The courageous step is to pause before you automatically agree, to take that popular judgment and hold it up to your own light. Take a pervasive one. The idea that being constantly busy is a badge of honor, a sign of importance. Your social mirror reflects this constantly. People boast about packed schedules. They wear exhaustion like a medal. The collective judgment assents busyness equals worth. Now subject it to the three questions. First, is this within my control? The cultural pressure to appear busy is external, but my choice of how to spend my time, how to define my worth, that's mine. Second, is this judgment accurate? Does a frantic schedule truly mean a meaningful life? The evidence suggests otherwise. Busyness often masks a lack of priority. It leads to burnout. Third, is assenting to this beneficial for my character? Does believing I must be always busy make me more wise, just temperate? It likely makes me anxious, scattered, less present for the people and principles I say I value. By withholding assent from the groupthink, you create space. You might assent instead to the idea that purposeful rest, focused work, empty space, that these are essential for a virtuous life. You won't necessarily announce this at a party. The discipline is internal, a quiet recalibration of your own standard. So here's a prompt, a challenge for self-examination. Identify one widely held belief in your immediate community, your family, your workplace, your friends, something you've never personally questioned. It could be about money, relationships, career paths, what constitutes a waste of time. Write it down, then, in private, apply the Stoic interrogation. Is it about what you control? Is it accurate based on your own reason and experience? Is believing it good for your character? You may choose to keep acting in line with that belief. But now it will be by your own examined choice, not by automatic echo. That's the moment your inner citadel grows stronger, when you stop reflecting the group's image and start casting your own light. That first piece of information you get, it acts like a weight. It sinks in deep and holds everything else in place. Your mind drops anchor on that first impression. It makes it hard to move even when new evidence comes in. That's the anchoring effect. It's a cognitive bias. An initial number, a rumor, a first glance, it sets the range for all your later thinking. You get that initial anchor, and without even realizing it, you give your assent to its pull. All your later judgments orbit that first point. Even if it was arbitrary, even if it was wrong, the shortcut is automatic. Someone says a project might take 2 weeks. That number, 2 weeks, becomes the anchor. Later you might learn it's a simpler task, but your planning, your stress, your whole timeline gets warped around that initial figure. You hear a rumor a new colleague is difficult. That label, difficult, becomes the anchor. Every neutral interaction gets filtered through that. Their directness looks like aggression. Their quiet focus looks like aloofness. The anchor holds your judgment. You stop collecting new data. You've already decided. This is where Stoic discipline meets modern psychology. The Stoic commitment was to follow reason and evidence wherever it leads. It's a form of intellectual integrity, to hold your judgments lightly, to be willing to revise them when new light appears. Epictetus spoke about this. He said, if anyone can show me that what I think or do is not right, I will gladly change. I seek the truth. No one was ever truly harmed by the truth. The harm is in the person who continues in self-deception. The harm is in the stubborn assent, the refusal to pull up the anchor when the current of facts has changed. The practice is to become aware of your own anchors and to consciously test them against later evidence. It involves that crucial pause, when you feel a strong opinion forming, especially from limited early information, you insert a question. You ask, what was my anchor here? What was the very first thing I heard or assumed? And then you deliberately seek counter-evidence. You look for facts that don't fit the story the anchor is telling. Take a practical example. You hear from a friend that someone you're about to meet is very intense, hard to work with. That's your anchor. It's dropped. Now in your meeting, every behavior gets interpreted through that filter. Their focused questions feel like an interrogation. Their high standards feel like criticism. The Stoic discipline asks you to catch this, to notice the anchor, and before the meeting is over, to consciously look for 3 pieces of evidence that contradict it. Maybe they laugh easily at a joke. Maybe they acknowledge a point you make with interest. Maybe they appreciate your preparation. These are new data points. You have to give them equal weight. You have to be willing to pull up the old anchor and drop a new one based on a fuller picture, a more rational one. This applies to self-judgment too. An early failure at a task can become an anchor. I'm not good at this. That anchor sticks. Every subsequent attempt gets measured against that initial proof of inability. The discipline is to seek the counter-evidence in your own history, to find moments, however small, where you showed competence or progress, to revise the judgment from a global "I'm not good at this" to a specific "I struggled with this initially, and I am improving." So here's a reflective prompt. Consider a recent strong opinion you formed about a person, a situation, about your own capabilities. First, identify the anchor. What was the initial piece of information that shaped this view? Now challenge yourself. List one single piece of evidence you've encountered since then that might contradict that anchor. Just one. Don't try to overthrow the whole opinion yet. Simply acknowledge that counter-evidence exists. That act of acknowledgement is the first tug on the chain. It's the beginning of pulling that anchor free, so your judgment can sail toward clearer waters. The final quiet of the day is where the real work happens. The Stoics, they didn't just train in the moment, they did this nightly audit of their judgments. That's how you hone the skill of assent. It's a daily debrief. A review of your own inner governance. You're not judging the day's events, you're reviewing your own responses to them. Where did you give your assent too quickly? Where did you believe a story that wasn't true? And where did you manage to pause? Where did you create that space between the impression and your reaction? This practice, the evening review, it's where philosophy becomes progress. It's where you move from theory into actual growth. Seneca wrote about this. In his letters, he described how before sleep he would examine his whole day. He'd go back over what he did and said. He wasn't looking for punishment. He was looking for correction. He'd ask himself, what bad habit did you cure today? What fault did you resist? In what way are you better? His focus was on improvement, not condemnation. The goal isn't to catalog failures. It's to build awareness, to see the patterns in your own thinking, to celebrate the small victories like a pause you actually took, and to gently note where the old habit, that rash agreement, still has a hold. It's a progressive sharpening of your most important tool, your faculty of choice. A practical review can be simple. It takes 5 minutes. You can do it in bed or in a chair before turning out the light. It centers on 3 questions. First, where did my mind lie to me today? You scan back through the day. Look for moments of tension or frustration or anxiety. Identify the specific impression you accepted as truth. Was it the thought that a colleague's brief email meant they were angry? Was it the story that a delayed train ruined your whole evening? Pinpoint the exact moment you gave your assent to that fabrication. Just naming it without self-criticism that begins to weaken its power. Second, where did I successfully pause and choose my judgment? Find at least one moment, however small, where you exercised that discipline. Maybe you felt a flash of irritation and chose to take a breath instead of snapping. Maybe you noticed a worry about the future and consciously brought your attention back to the task at hand. Acknowledge that victory. It's evidence your practice is working, that the muscle is strengthening. Third, what can I learn for tomorrow? Based on today's audit, set one simple intention. It might be tomorrow, when I feel that first rush of frustration in the morning meeting, I will remember to label it as a story before I believe it. Or tomorrow, I will practice right-sizing my reaction to minor inconveniences. Keep it small, specific, actionable. This isn't about overhauling your character overnight. It's about directing your attention for the next day's practice. Imagine applying it to a common scenario. Say your day had a difficult work conversation that left you feeling defensive. In your review, you identify the lie. your mind's story that the criticism was entirely unfair, that it was meant to undermine you. You note the missed opportunity. You assented to that story immediately, and it fueled your defensive tone. Then you find a small success. Later, when you felt a pang of anxiety about it, you paused and asked if the worry was about something within your control. You're learning for tomorrow. In moments of perceived criticism, my first step will be to silently ask, is this impression accurate, or is it a story? This simple process builds a feedback loop. Without it, your practice of assent happens in isolated moments you quickly forget. With it, you create a record of growth. You see your own patterns emerge. You become the student and the teacher of your own mind. So the invitation is to try this 5-minute review for just one evening this week. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be honest. Find a quiet moment and walk through those 3 questions. Where did my mind lie? Where did I pause? What is my one small lesson? This nightly audit is the quiet forge where your inner freedom is tempered, one examined day at a time. Knowing how a push-up works doesn't make you stronger. You have to do the push-ups, and it's the same with the discipline of assent. You can know the theory, the 3 questions, the idea of the pause, but that's just knowledge. Until you've built the muscle, and muscles get built through repetition, through consistent, deliberate practice. That's where philosophy stops being something you know and starts being something you live. The Stoics had a word for this, ascesis, a kind of spiritual exercise, the daily training of your character. An athlete doesn't wait for the championship to start running. You don't wait for a major crisis to start practicing your assent. You start in the small moments, the quiet friction of an ordinary day. Epictetus put it a certain way. He said you have to learn to want everything to be exactly as it is. And that learning, he said, is a craft. It needs daily work. For the Stoics, philosophy was never just interesting ideas to talk about. It was a way of life, a constant training of your perceptions, your reactions. To move from theory to habit, you make this training routine, like brushing your teeth. It starts with a decision to start small, to pick one tiny, recurring irritation and make that your practice ground. The goal isn't to get rid of the irritation. The goal is to change your relationship to it, to use it as the weight you lift, to strengthen your proheresis, your faculty of choice. So choose something minor. Something that happens almost every day, the long line at the coffee shop, a slow computer program loading, the sound of a neighbor's dog barking, the moment your child interrupts your work. This is your gym equipment. Each one is an impression waiting for your unchecked agreement, a story about wasted time or inefficiency or disrespect. Your practice is to intercept that story. Here's the micro practice. For 1 week, you pick one of these triggers, just one, and you commit to applying the full Stoic pause every single time it happens. You feel that initial surge of frustration, that's the impression. You mentally say pause. You take one conscious breath. In that space, you ask the first question. Is this within my control? The line, the computer, the barking dog? Probably not. Your reaction is. Then you consciously withhold your assent from the catastrophic story. You might even state the objective reality. I am in a line of 7 people. My computer is processing. A dog is making noise nearby. Then you proceed. You get your coffee, you wait for the program, you put in headphones. The external event might not change, but your internal world just did a successful rep. You strengthen the neural pathway between the stimulus and your chosen response. The magic is in the consistency, not in getting it right every time. You will forget, you will snap, the old habit will win. That's part of the training. The practice is in the return, noticing you've been hijacked and gently, without judging yourself, guiding yourself back to the pause. Each time you do this, you are rewiring your brain, making the examined judgment more automatic, more instinctual. Over days and weeks, that micro-practice starts to generalize. You find yourself pausing before reacting to a sharp email, You notice the space opening up when a plan falls through. The muscle you built on the small stuff is now strong enough to handle heavier weights. So your task is to choose right now. What's your one micro-practice trigger for the coming week? Be specific. Is it the red traffic light on your commute home? Is it the moment you open a crowded email inbox? Is it the sound of a specific notification on your phone? Name it, decide on it. This small, deliberate commitment is the bridge between understanding the map and actually walking the path. Your strength is waiting in those daily, quiet reps. What is the point of all this discipline? It's not about control. It's about becoming the author of your own inner world. That's the goal. The Stoics called it eleutheria, freedom, not political freedom. Not doing whatever you want, but an internal emancipation, freedom from being a puppet, your strings pulled by every event, every impression, every surge of emotion. When you master the discipline of assent, you cut those strings, you step out of the puppet show, you become the quiet authority of the puppeteer, unshackled from the inside. Epictetus knew this. He started life in external bondage. He spoke about this inner liberty. He said no one can harm the mind of a person who does not assent to being harmed. Think about that power. Your ultimate safety isn't in changing the world. It's in the sovereignty of your own judgment, in your ability to say no to the stories that would enslave you. No one can make you feel insulted unless you agree the words were an insult. No event can ruin your peace unless you endorse the narrative that it should. This is the citadel, and its gates are operated by your assent. Now picture two ways of moving through a day. The first is reactive. You wake up and scroll. Each headline is an impression, a story of conflict. Without a pause, you give your assent. You absorb the anxiety, the outrage, the weather is bad, and you agree it's a miserable day. A work email is phrased poorly, and you buy the story of disrespect. Your plans get cancelled, and you accept the narrative of disappointment. You are in a state of constant hijacking. Your inner state is a mirror of the external chaos. You are owned by it. Now the second way, the day brings the same headlines, the same weather, the same email. But you have the pause. You see the headline and you choose. You ask, is this a story I need to give my energy to? You might read for context, but you withhold assent from the catastrophic spin. The gray sky is just a gray sky, a neutral observation. The terse email gets a breath. You examine the impression. Is this about my control? Is this story accurate? From that space, you craft a calm reply. The cancelled plans bring a flicker of disappointment. You acknowledge it, but you refuse the added drama. You pivot. You find a different way to spend the time. In this mode, you are not a mirror. You are a prism, taking in the light of events and refracting it through your own chosen character. You are free, not because the world is perfect, but because your peace is no longer its hostage. This freedom is practical. You feel it in the quiet moments. In not carrying the commute's frustration into your home, in not letting a stranger's rude comment echo for hours, in not being derailed by criticism because you can separate the useful feedback from the emotional noise. You become the calm in the storm, not because the storm isn't raging, but because you've built a shelter within yourself, and the door to that shelter is your disciplined assent. So consider this. Pick one area where you feel a recurring mental tension: your work, a family dynamic, your health, your finances. Imagine for a moment what it would feel like to be completely free in that area. Not because the external situation changed, but because you were free from one specific, self-imposed narrative you carry about it. If it's work, maybe the narrative is, I am not progressing fast enough. If it's a relationship, maybe it's, I must fix this person's mood. If it's finances, maybe it's, I will never have enough. Imagine the weight of that single story dissolving. What would you think about instead? How would you act? What quiet space would open up inside you? That imagined space, that lightness, is a glimpse of the freedom that mastery of assent makes possible. It's not a distant fantasy. It's the natural state of a mind that has stopped agreeing to its own captivity. That moment you catch the lie, that's the whole point. You try this practice and maybe 10 minutes later your mind starts telling some catastrophic story, and you believe it for 5 whole minutes. Then you notice. Well, congratulations, you noticed. That noticing is the practice. It's not a failure. It's the most important data point you can get. The goal was never to become a sage overnight, someone immune to impressions. The goal is to build a relationship with your own thinking, to become a curious observer of your mind's habits instead of a captive audience. Each time you catch a false assent after the fact, you're doing the exact work required. You're strengthening the very awareness that will make the pause come a little sooner next time. This is the path, and the path is the practice. There's no finish line where your mind just stops generating impressions. The work is in the catching, the examining, the gentle correcting, of course. The Stoics were realistic about this. They spoke about progress, not perfection. Seneca wrote that we shouldn't be surprised we can't suddenly become perfect. It's enough if we diminish our faults. We should be content if every day we take away something from our errors. Each time you withhold assent, even if it's after the emotional wave has already crested, you've taken something away from the error. You've diminished the fault's power. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself to begin again. He'd write that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. And then the very next day, he'd write a similar reminder, because the realization isn't a one-time event. It's a daily return, a recommitment. The obstacle, the lapse, the moment you get swept away, that isn't a sign you're bad at this. It is the training ground itself. It's the weight you lift to get stronger. So what do you do in that moment of realization, when you catch yourself halfway through a spiral of worry you agreed to an hour ago? There's a practical tool here, a mental do-over. The scenario has passed, the interaction is over, the email is sent, but your internal narrative is still running. That's where you have jurisdiction. You can pause right now and mentally replay the scenario. This time you insert the pause you missed. You hear the impression. You take the breath and you consciously choose the virtuous judgment. You see yourself responding with calm instead of defensiveness. You see yourself stating the objective fact instead of the dramatic story. You see yourself focusing on the next right action instead of the complaint. This isn't fantasy, it's neural rehearsal. You're laying down a new track in your mind for how to handle that trigger next time. You're teaching your brain through vivid imagination what the disciplined assent looks and feels like. It turns a lapse from a defeat into a training session. This week, make a commitment to a different kind of rigor, the rigor of self-compassion. Your task is not to never fall. Your task is to notice the fall and to get up with understanding. Treat each lapse not as a tyrant punishing you, but as the kindest, most precise teacher you could ask for. It shows you exactly where your current edge is. Where the old habit is still strong, that is invaluable information. So when you snap at a loved one and later realize it was because you'd assented to a story about your whole day being ruined, don't layer on a story of being a bad person. Thank your awareness for showing up. Note the pattern. The trigger was the disrupted plan. The lie was that it ruined everything. And then, if you can, do the mental do-over. Replay the moment with a breath and a different internal choice. This is how you walk the path, not by never stumbling, but by learning the texture of every stone that trips you. The first thing to understand is that your mind's initial story isn't the truth. It's just a suggestion. It's often a convincing lie. That recognition changes everything. You start to create a pause, that stoic pause between the impression and your agreement. You use the 3 questions as a filter. Is this within my control? Is my judgment accurate? Is believing this good for my character? You practice seeing things as they are, not as your fears paint them. You sort the world into what's up to you and what isn't. And you stop carrying the weight of that second box. You learn to right-size your reactions, to see envy as a signal, to pull up old anchors. This is the discipline of assent. It's not a one-time fix. It's building an inner citadel, brick by brick. It's returning again and again to the sovereignty of your own mind. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this. He said you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize that, and you find strength. That's what this discipline offers. Not a life without challenge, but a life where challenge doesn't own your peace. So the invitation is to take a step from understanding into action. In the next day, choose one technique. It could be the one-breath pause when frustration flares. It could be applying the 3 questions to a single worry. It could be catching a should statement and letting it go. Pick one. Practice it once with intention. That's how the muscle grows.